Michael Jackson was one of the most famous entertainers in history. His music crossed borders, languages, and generations. From Thriller to Billie Jean, from the moonwalk to his unforgettable stage style, Michael became more than a singer. He became a global symbol. Millions of people saw the costumes, the sold-out stadiums, the screaming crowds, and the record-breaking success. From the outside, it looked like a life filled with everything a person could ever want. But fame can create a strange kind of distance. The more famous Michael became, the harder it was for him to live an ordinary life. A simple trip outside could become a media event. Every appearance was analyzed. Every change in his face, voice, clothes, or behavior became a headline. For many years, the world expected Michael Jackson to be perfect, mysterious, and larger than life at the same time. That pressure did not disappear when the music stopped. By the mid-2000s, Michael had gone through one of the most difficult periods of his life. In 2005, he was acquitted of criminal charges after a highly publicized trial. But being found not guilty did not mean the experience left no mark. The trial had placed his private life under a microscope, and the attention around it changed how the public viewed him. Afterward, Michael stepped away from Neverland Ranch, the home that had once represented his imagination, creativity, and escape from the outside world. Neverland had been more than a mansion. It was a place built around the childhood Michael often said he had missed. It had rides, animals, a theater, and a train. It was his attempt to create a world where wonder still existed. But after the trial, the property became connected to painful memories, legal pressure, and financial problems. Michael did not return to live there in his final years. For fans, this was difficult to understand. Michael Jackson had created a place that looked like a dream, yet even that dream could not protect him from the real world. In the years that followed, he spent time away from the United States and tried to keep a lower profile. He was still one of the most recognizable people on earth, but he was no longer constantly releasing music or touring. He was also raising his 3 children, Prince, Paris, and Blanket. Those close to him often described fatherhood as one of the parts of life he valued most. Still, the world did not stop waiting for Michael Jackson to return. The public wanted another album. Promoters wanted another tour. Fans wanted another moment that would prove the King of Pop was still untouchable. But behind the expectation was a man who had already spent most of his life performing under impossible pressure. Michael had been working since childhood. He entered the spotlight when he was very young, performing with his brothers in the Jackson 5. While other children were living ordinary school lives, Michael was rehearsing, recording, traveling, and learning how to perform in front of crowds. That early success gave him a career that few people could ever imagine. But it also meant that privacy and normal life were things he rarely experienced. As he grew older, his success became even bigger. Albums like Off the Wall, Thriller, Bad, and Dangerous turned him into a worldwide phenomenon. His concerts brought together people from different countries, cultures, and backgrounds. For many fans, Michael was not just an artist. He was part of their childhood, their memories, and their dreams. But being loved by millions does not always mean a person feels understood. The public saw Michael as a legend. The media often treated him as a mystery. And every time he tried to change his life or protect his privacy, people had questions. Why was he living quietly? Why was he not performing? Why did he seem distant from the world that had made him famous? The truth may be that he was trying to find peace in a life where peace had become difficult to reach. That is where the hidden pain begins. It was not one single event. It was years of public judgment, financial stress, private struggles, and the burden of carrying a name that had become bigger than any one person could manage. And by the time Michael prepared to step onto a stage again, the comeback was carrying far more weight than anyone could see. In 2009, Michael Jackson announced This Is It, a planned series of concerts in London. At first, the plan was for 10 shows at the O2 Arena. The demand was enormous. Tickets sold so quickly that the number of concerts expanded to 50. For fans, it felt like a miracle. Michael Jackson was coming back to the stage. After years away, the performer who had changed pop music was preparing to remind the world why he was called the King of Pop. But the comeback was not just about music. It came at a time when Michael faced serious financial pressure. His spending, debts, and complicated business arrangements had been reported for years. Neverland itself had faced foreclosure pressure before a deal helped restructure the situation. The concerts promised a major financial opportunity, but they also placed enormous demands on a man who had been away from full-scale touring for years. The public saw the announcement, the excitement, and the famous line, "This is it." But behind the scenes, the production was huge. 50 shows meant months of rehearsals, choreography, costumes, special effects, musicians, dancers, and a schedule that would challenge almost any performer. Michael had always been known for perfection. He was not the type of artist who simply walked on stage and sang a few songs. Every movement mattered. Every beat had to feel right. Every visual had to match the music. His standards were incredibly high, and that was one reason his performances became legendary. But perfection can become a heavy burden when someone is exhausted. The planned show was designed to be much more than a normal concert. It would include classic songs, major dance routines, film sequences, dramatic costumes, and large visual effects. Michael wanted fans to feel that they were seeing something special, not simply watching an older version of his past performances. That desire to impress people was part of who he was as an artist. He always wanted to create a bigger moment. He wanted to surprise people. He wanted every show to feel like an event that fans would remember forever. But the same ambition that made him great also created pressure. He was preparing for 50 concerts after years away from a full touring schedule. He had to rehearse long hours while dealing with the attention of producers, dancers, musicians, business partners, and media outlets around the world. Every decision mattered because the production involved huge amounts of money and thousands of people. Reports from the period describe Michael dealing with severe insomnia. In the final weeks of his life, he was rehearsing for the London shows while struggling to sleep. The official medical findings later showed that he died from acute propofol intoxication, with other sedatives also involved. His physician, Conrad Murray, was later convicted of involuntary manslaughter. This part of Michael's story is important because it should not be treated as gossip or entertainment. Sleep problems can affect a person's thinking, energy, mood, and ability to cope with pressure. For Michael, the issue became part of a dangerous medical situation. The world saw a superstar preparing for a huge comeback. But privately, he was dealing with a problem that was getting harder to control. The title of this is It Now Feels Heartbreaking because it was supposed to represent a new beginning. It was meant to be a celebration of his career. It was meant to show that Michael could still command a stage and bring millions of people together. The rehearsals captured him singing, dancing, giving instructions, and showing flashes of the artist fans remembered. People who worked with him during rehearsals often described moments when he seemed focused, creative, and deeply involved in every detail. He still knew how he wanted a song to sound. He still knew how a dance move should look. He still had the ability to make an entire room pay attention when he began to perform. But there was also a human being behind the image. A father trying to prepare for an enormous commitment. A performer carrying decades of expectation. A man whose every move had been judged by the world. And someone who needed rest but could not seem to find it. The hidden pain was not always visible in photographs or short video clips. That is what made it so tragic. Michael could still appear focused in rehearsal. He could still create moments of brilliance. But private exhaustion does not always show itself clearly until it becomes impossible to ignore. And on June 25, 2009, the comeback the world had been waiting for suddenly became a goodbye nobody was prepared to face. Michael Jackson died at age 50, just weeks before the first planned This Is It concert. The news spread across the world with unbelievable speed. Fans gathered outside his home, outside hospitals, at the Hollywood Walk of Fame, and in cities far from Los Angeles. Radio stations played his music non-stop. People who had grown up with his songs felt as if they had lost a part of their own childhood. His death was not only the loss of a performer. It was the loss of an era. Michael had spent his entire life in front of the public. He began performing as a child with the Jackson 5. He grew into a solo artist who changed music videos, dance, fashion, live concerts, and pop culture itself. He broke records that seemed impossible. He made people dance in their homes, copy his moves at school, and believe that music could feel like magic. But his final years also remind people that fame does not protect someone from pain. A person can have wealth, talent, fans, and global recognition, yet still struggle with fear, exhaustion, loneliness, and pressure. Michael's story is not simply about tragedy. It is also about the cost of living under constant attention from childhood onward. His legacy remains complicated and deeply debated. He was acquitted in the 2005 criminal trial, while later allegations and public discussions have continued to shape how different people view his life and career. Any honest look at Michael Jackson must recognize that his legacy includes both extraordinary artistic influence and serious, unresolved public controversy. But regardless of where people stand in those discussions, one fact is clear. Michael Jackson changed the world of entertainment forever. His music continues to reach new generations. His dance moves are still copied. His videos are still studied. His influence can be seen in artists across pop, R&B, hip-hop, dance, and fashion. Even today, decades after his biggest albums, his name remains one of the most powerful in music history. The heartbreaking part is that Michael never got to see what this is it could have become. He never got to stand in front of those London crowds. He never got to complete the comeback that had been planned on such a massive scale. Instead, the rehearsal footage became a final glimpse of an artist still trying to create something special. After his death, the footage from the rehearsals was turned into the documentary film Michael Jackson's This Is It. For many fans, watching it was emotional because it showed both sides of Michael at once. It showed the confident performer who could still command a stage. But it also showed a man carrying the pressure of a huge return. The film became a reminder that his talent had not disappeared. Even near the end of his life, Michael still had ideas, energy, and a deep understanding of performance. He was still thinking about the audience. He was still trying to give people something they had never seen before. His children were also left to carry the personal side of his legacy. To the public, Michael Jackson was a global icon. But to Prince, Paris, and Blanket, he was their father. That difference matters. Behind every famous name is a family that experiences loss in a much more private way. Michael's story also changed the way many people think about celebrity. It showed that a person can look powerful on stage while struggling in private. It showed that applause does not always remove pain. And it reminded the world that famous people are still human beings, even when their image becomes larger than life. Perhaps that is why his final years continue to affect people so strongly. Behind the glittering glove, the stage lights, and the legendary music was a person carrying more pressure than the world understood. Michael Jackson's hidden pain was not a single secret waiting to be revealed. It was the quiet weight of a life lived in public, the struggle to find peace after years of attention, and the impossible expectation that he would always remain larger than life. But his music remains. And for millions of fans, that music is where Michael Jackson will always live on. What Michael Jackson's song means the most to you? Share it in the comments, and subscribe for more stories about the lives, legacies, and untold journeys behind music's biggest legends.